What's going on, everybody? Welcome to week 11. Flying along here. Just get this. Okay. Right. Yeah. Looking at imperialism and empires. We're kind of finishing up on the cusp of the 20th century. Getting into the present now, since we're almost done with the semester. We should get to today. So we got a little bit of work to get there. We got a century of stuff to cover, a lot of changes, but I think imperialism and imperialized really wraps up this section of the course very well. Kind of leads on the cusp of some changes and challenges that we'll talk about in the coming weeks of the 20th century. But really, this kind of sets the stage of it. That on one hand, a lot of these movements we've talked about, concepts of nation, industrialization, new economic systems, ideologies, science. Right? These get, when we talked about sort of the impact that with imperialism, these become tools of empire, right? I went through there a little bit and talked about how these were implemented around the globe, particularly by Europeans who had this technological advantage. This economic system reliance on extraction, right, and science behind it to prove that they were civilizing these worlds, or at least in their minds, right? And we talked about the issues of that with imperialism, and then the other side of the coin, the imperialized. What was the experience of these people who in which the tools of empire were being implemented and utilized? We see that in India. So we talked about sort of this transition from India is a good example of a transition from sort of economic colonialism, where the East India Company was just an economic power, but became sort of integrated into India, and internal powers in India started to sort of break apart. The Mughal Empire, predominantly in this new, and to protect their economic interests, the British Raj implements itself after this rebellion, the Sepoy Rebellion or revolt. Depending on how you want to look at it, in 1857, where then India takes, or British take direct control of India. So this idea of imperialism, colonialism, and imperialism, sort of the lines overlap a lot, but one of the sort of distinctive lines is that colonialism is sort of the expansion, settler colonialism, moving into a place, setting up a presence there, whereas imperialism is direct control, right? We are in charge now, usually foreign control. India is a good example of that. China is a good example of that. Well, we sort of touched that with tea and the Opium Wars, and this lecture expands on that a little bit with the Qing Dynasty and its internal issues. The Opium Wars exacerbated that and allowed first the British and then other groups to move in. I mean, China was always the prize. We've seen that theme throughout this semester, that everybody wanted to trade with China by the 19th century. China is sort of forced to open, and it does. And so that's the Chinese side. Africa, right? Again, sort of this idea of imperialism, that Africa is divvied up. The Berlin Conference, I showed some maps before and after of that, of 1884, where basically most of Africa is divvied and divided between these European imperial powers. That relates to nations, right? That this competition to be a nation at that time, particularly in Europe, was to be an empire, and so there was a lot of competition there. We'll see how that plays out. That's gonna be an issue in the 20th century. So we see that in Africa. We see that in Oceania as well. A lot of divvying up, but also a new player comes up in Oceania, Japan. It's transitioned. It's used these similar tools of empires, exported from the West and then utilized, implanted in Japan. And then part of the other side of this empire is because people were spreading out. They're moving around. You have this sort of second diaspora. The first being, 1500, where people were moving between the old and new worlds. Now, people from Europe are moving to imperial places. Peoples within empires are moving around for labor and various things. So a lot of immigration in the United States. This is where the United States becomes sort of the melting pot, if you will. A lot of people immigrating for opportunities in other parts of the world. So. And that's I think that's a good sort of wrap up, to take a step back and reflect on what we've learned, which is where quiz 2 is coming in. There's a review guide. You have review terms. We try to finish those by today. The quiz is due on Friday, or quiz is open on Friday from 8 a.m., I believe, all the way till 11:55 p.m. So anytime on Friday, an hour and 15 minutes. Same sort of layout as quiz 1. geography, fill in the blank, matching, and then a short answer, 5 W's. In this 5 W's, I want you to use 2 terms from the review guide in your response. I'll be looking for those as well. So, it just kind of shows me that you're putting these terms together, that you're able to sort of utilize these. So, and again, course materials reference, it's OpenNote. You can use any course materials you want in the review guide, anything. I want you guys to learn this stuff, or at least be familiar with it. You don't have to memorize it, just remember it. But any information that we haven't covered in the class, right, I'm just going to assume that that's something from the internet or the AI world. So just focus on this course material. So I think that's it. I looked over your nations. That's what I have here. Nations, Padlet. Good job. Again, I want to be a little more creative. We talked a lot about nations, but I think when you actually have to sit down and walk through, that nations are complex things. It's not just let's make this nation and have a flag, right? I mean, there's a lot of internal and external dynamics at play, and those are still going on today. I mean, you can see that every nation sort of struggles with that, and we'll since the world is now defined by them, hopefully have a little bit better idea of how they're formed, how they're maintained, how they can collapse, all of those things. So and hope you had a little fun. Thanks for making that. I liked some people's presentations. You didn't have to do that, but good job on you. Thought it was fun. Fun for me to look at. So great. All right, I think that's it. Have a good rest of your week.